Hey, hopefully I got that right. And I'm in the right place. Welcome, my friends. Here we are. It is Chat with Matt. Today is the 27th of July, 2022. I'm broadcasting from my new house here that is obviously a bit of a construction site. Well, that's a hot water cylinder that hasn't been put in. Down there is where the kitchen should be, and you can see straight through to where the bathroom should be. So, as you can see, the house is not exactly habitable at the moment. But it should be in about 4 weeks' time if I keep going as I'm intending to go. Anywho, that's irrelevant. Well, maybe it's not irrelevant, but it's not really what we're here to do. We're here to talk about whatever might be helping you. Hey, Sister Audra. Yeah, the cap's looking a bit rough. I'm definitely in work attire here. Hey, Sister Susie. It is a bit chilly. It's not too bad because it's raining as well. Happy Wednesday, Deb and Rosemary. Hello. So, yeah, it's a real open plan at the moment. As you can see, you can basically... it's just lacking amenity, but it's very open plan. Selling points. Hey, Sister Julie. So, yeah, I've got a few questions to start with, and then we'll progress into whatever you guys want to know. This is not really just about delivering information, although I will share my points of view on various topics. It's not intended to be, somehow important information. I'm here to stimulate transformation. So I might challenge you a little bit with your points of view. I'm not saying that I'm right and you're wrong. What I'm encouraging everyone to do is inquire into why we are holding the beliefs that we hold, and are they really that valid? And they might be valid for right now, but are they always going to be valid, etc., right? Let's loosen up, expand out, and really get into our hearts ultimately, and live our best, most bright light life out there in the world, being an influence, being a positive influence. I think that's going to fit in with this first question too. And potentially the second one. Anyway, Debbie Love wrote, what does Mantara have to say about the recent fear-mongering, particularly in New Zealand? Our esteemed Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, and her doomsday announcement about foot and mouth and killing stock, and 100,000 primary industry jobs gone, and then today's orchestrated lockdowns in a number of schools. Yeah, I have to admit, I don't follow the news particularly closely, Debbie, especially when I'm busy doing other things like this. Hey, Sister Jill. So what do we have to say about the recent fear-mongering? Don't buy into it, basically. It's real easy. It is really easy to get, quote-unquote, angry, frustrated, etc. Strong emotions around when we see that various authoritarian figures are really promoting fear. Those of us who don't buy into the fear then get fearful about how many other people are going to buy into the fear and where our society's going with all of this. It's a trap, right? It's a freaking trap. So the more that we can not necessarily ignore what is going on, but choose to expand out of it or rise above it, and just keep on keeping on. Like, I've heard through various sources, basically, contacts on Facebook, etc., that there's been a huge uptick in the, in the fear-mongering, as you said, but in the push for people to mask up and to wear their masks everywhere. But I'm not seeing that. In actual fact, I've just come from Mitre 10 down here, the hardware store, and none of the tradesmen were wearing masks as they walked through Mitre 10. All of the staff were, but many of them with their nose out, so mask at half-mast, so to speak. I don't think people are buying into it, and I actually think that the push is potentially showing them up for what they are, because people are getting tired of this, and people are waking up to the fact that it's, doesn't make sense. So I choose to have a lot of confidence that, as hard as various authorities are trying to lock us down, to keep us small, to keep us in fear, that the population is actually awakening and choosing to rebel in their own ways, to not comply and to go out there and live their lives. People are tired of jumping through hoops to try and be quote unquote right and virtuous, and they just don't give a F anymore about doing that. So I think that's positive, and I do believe we will move forward despite their best efforts to, create food shortages, to create job losses, to create dependence amongst the community. We can see that's what they're trying to do. They're crashing the economy on purpose, in my opinion, worldwide, not just here in New Zealand, to contract society into a more fear-based survivalist mentality where we will choose to comply with what the solution that they're offering up, which we all know, Agenda 2030 and the World Economic Forum, et cetera, which is, being progressed in many countries, including New Zealand and Australia and Canada and other places as well, to lesser extents. But anyway, some of us are being chosen as the test case guinea pig leading the way. So the advice is to be aware. Bugs, if you talk about eating bugs, I'm not 100% against eating bugs. I'm a vegetarian, but the point is, in Africa and places like that, and parts of Asia, they've been eating bugs for thousands of years. There's nothing potentially wrong with eating bugs as a concept of eating bugs, right? Insects are not off the menu any more than anything else should be. But the bugs that they're suggesting, factory farmed, right, are not going to be good for you, right? Just like factory farm beef or anything else, pork is not particularly chicken, it's not particularly good for you, right, because it's grown under non-natural conditions. Factory farmed crickets or any other protein source is not going to be good for you. If we were foraging insects as part of our diet, it would probably be fine, right? I'm not against that. I don't think that's a bad thing. People have been doing it, as I said, for thousands of years. So the point is not to freak out about the fact that it's insects that they're suggesting we eat. It's the fact that it's once again it's a factory farmed source. Just as like I've been vegetarian for over 25 years now, and there is no way in hell I would go near one of Bill Gates's, vegan meat type substitutes, right, that are just laden with crap, absolutely laden with it. And not just because it's Bill Gates, but I wouldn't go near anyone's. I'm not into eating mock meat and all of this stuff, Tofu is pretty much where I draw the line at the amount of processing. And again, they've been making tofu for thousands of years, and you can do so without adding a lot of stuff, basically. Fermented soybean is not a bad product as long as the soybeans are organically grown, etc. Sorry, I'm a bit sniffly because I made the mistake of just messing with some stuff in the roof before I came on, which probably wasn't smart. But anyway, so yeah, hopefully that helps, Deb. So did I get to the advice? Basically, be aware of what's going on, but rise above it. Choose not to get angry about it overly, and choose not to get frustrated or scared about it, and choose not to be overly militant. Be careful of the activist mindset that makes purpose out of fighting against something. We need to, what is going to really serve us is to advocate for the outcome that we desire. So that's the advice, is to keep aligning with what we are choosing. Be aware that there's agendas out there to railroad what we are choosing and to install some other sort of, totalitarian state. But we're aware of that, but we're not choosing to focus on that, because what we focus on, we feed, and what we feed grows stronger. What we fight against, we naturally focus on. So we don't want to fight against that stuff, but we do want to be the change we want to see. We want to be in alignment with the world, the society, the state of being that we choose to live in. And as such, we become an influence for many other people to choose that, both visually as an example, but also energetically. We start aligning with the outcome and radiating, broadcasting that vibration out, and that helps people, other people, travel in that direction, think in that way, be influenced by that energy, as opposed to being influenced by the bombardment of, as Debbie put out, the doomsday announcements and all of the fear porn that is being very, very, I would say, effectively broadcast in our society right now. They're spending a fortune on advertising, the government. Why are we using taxpayer money to advertise their agenda? That's, that is so fucking annoying, right? Without choosing to get angry. But this is the point. They're not actually spending the money on the healthcare. They're spending the money on the advertising campaign to tell us to comply. Meanwhile, our, public services are in friggin' absolute disarray under whatever, funded will do. Resourced was the word I was looking for. Anyways, so hopefully that helps, Deb. We just have to hold tight with where we're going and choose not to be overly manipulated by their agenda. Fiona wrote in, why do so many people not communicate properly these days when they don't even have to have a conversation? Yet they can't even send an SMS or an email. I really find this so rude and frustrating. Yeah, it's part of the same agenda, Sister Fiona. Exactly, said Julie Ray. Hang on, Deb wrote, thank you, I appreciate your perspective. I have not yet worn a mask, scanned in, signed in, and I shall continue. Yeah, I don't have the app for signing in or scanning in either. I didn't do that right from day dot. I have to admit I have worn a mask from time to time, but recently not. It took me a while to really get my confidence around being non-compliant in that way. I personally have a lot of past life trauma around standing out and getting persecuted. So it took me quite a while to gain my confidence in that. And for a while I was wearing the fucking, the exemption badge to help me not have to wear a mask. But slowly but surely I've gained confidence. And as, we've progressed, more and more people are now choosing not to. So it's getting easier and easier when you're not the only one in the whole of the friggin' supermarket or etc. not wearing one. And copying everyone's sideward stares, glances, and etc. Hey, Sister Mary. So anyway, why do people not communicate? Yeah, I think it's part of the same agenda that has been being installed by our, authoritarian regime, not necessarily just the government, but the people above the government and how they control our education system and our, advertising, etc., to really create division and a real lack of trust in other people and a real sense of separation. And people these days don't value communication. Part of this thing, you said they don't even have to have a conversation, right? They can just send a text. But it's been through that mechanism where people have been removed from the joy and the sustenance that comes with face-to-face communication, that people have lost their respect for communicating altogether, right? So at first, the technology was great, and it still is great in many ways, as it allows us to easily communicate thoughts and ideas and intent without, taking a lot of time. It's very efficient, which, our society really values efficiency and productivity, etc., producing and consuming. But through this process of over-technologizing everything and people, getting glued to their phones and lost in social media, etc., communication itself has lost its appeal. And many people equate communicating to now putting a status on Facebook, which is always, overinflated to make me look good so that I don't get judged by others who are judging everyone on this platform, right? So slowly but surely, I feel that people have basically lost the art of communicating. And so even doing basic things now, like stating your intention via a text or an email, they've lost comprehension of why that's quote unquote important, why that's valid, why that's beneficial, right, for parties involved, to actually, let others know what their intentions are and whether they're running late, etc., or they've changed their mind on something. People are people have got into this thing that we didn't even have when we were growing up, right, called ghosting. Whereas if where people just avoid their difficulties, right, they just avoid relationships that feel scary, dangerous, uncomfortable. Uncomfortable is really the right word there. Anything that's uncomfortable now, we just avoid. We're seeing this across the board, with this sort of cancel culture, where anyone who states something that goes against the narrative, anyone who says anything that's quote unquote uncomfortable, they just get cancelled. They just remove their platform. They just basically get ghosted by the authorities. Sister Deb wrote, I've always been rebellious against authority. It started when I was young. Just ask my parents. Yeah. Awesome. I've always had a healthy mistrust of authority, but also grew up with, not installed by my parents, but from past life, a deep fear of authority, and thus was very compliant as a child in order to stay on the right side of it, through my schooling, particularly my younger years, and at home with my parents. My parents will tell you I was a very easy child because I did everything I was told, pretty much. Anywho's, interesting, right? How we all have, and this is it. This is where our strength lies, in my opinion. We can create communities like this where we are diverse in many of our traits, and yet we have a commonality, and we allow our commonality to be enough, right? And to honour the fact that we all have different histories and we all have different opinions about right now. I'm very quick not to try and instill in any of my communities this idea that there's only one way of anything, and that there's a correct and a right and a wrong way of thinking about anything or acting in any particular way. It's not healthy, To that point, with this whole idea of cancel culture, and why I feel that this is what, to answer Fiona's question, this is why I think people aren't communicating anymore, is they've just got into this idea that if it's dangerous to communicate in many ways, and it's not, and people have lost the necessity to do it, and they're into this idea that, we'll just ignore it, we'll just, avoid it, anything that's uncomfortable. Even saying that, I can't make my appointment today, they'd rather just not show up than send you a message to say, I'm really sorry, I can't make it, right? Because it almost feels uncomfortable to send a text to say they're not coming. So they'd rather just, bury it and pretend they don't need to deal with it and not send you anything. I just got kicked out of a community that I've been involved in since 2013. It was a very foundational community for me in many, many ways. It was before I'd heard of light language. I was listening to Judy Satori at that time. But yeah, I hadn't even dreamt of speaking light language at that time, right? So that community helped me evolve a lot, helped me formulate how I do communities, both seeing what I like about online communities and what I don't like about online communities, because it was even evident right back then. I was one of the founding 20 people that came into that group that is now, before this latest blow up, was over 200. But anyway, interestingly, even within spiritual communities, and even in quite advanced, quote unquote, spiritual communities, this vibration of censorship and this idea of staying comfortable in our unity, right? Wanting everyone to comply, wanting everyone to be on the same page, wanting everyone to do things the same way and agree with the same narratives and stories and belief systems is heightened, intensified right now, to the point where, authoritarian agendas within the administration of this said group was making dictates about, mandates about what we should and shouldn't do, what we had to do in terms of staying in the group. And I basically decided that I wasn't doing that and was willing to state that to the admins. And I also stated why I thought their direction was not appropriate. And they basically said, well, goodbye. You're not in the group anymore. They didn't remove me from the group. I think they were waiting for me to leave the group, which I was never going to do because, it's their karma. If they want to kick me out, they have to kick me out. I'm not leaving just because they say I'm not welcome. They did kick me out eventually, but only after I put some comments on someone else's post who was also concerned about the direction the group was going with these new directives. Anywho, we all got kicked out, and of course the post got removed, etc., etc. As was the habit or the direction the group was going. Basically, under the guise of protecting the members from negativity, we're going to censor everything that's negative. We're going to pull it down. We're going to pull it down. We're going to remove posts and remove comments that are negative, that speak out against anything and make anyone feel uncomfortable. And in doing so, they're sort of creating a monoculture of people who are all on board with all the same ideas. And we all know what happens to monocultures, right? Monocultures fail dismally because they don't have any diversity. They don't have any, like in biology, monocultures always fail because there's no genetic diversity, and they get more and more reliant on inputs, right? Fertilizers and pesticides, etc., to keep them alive. And eventually that system crashes. And we're seeing this happen across the board in many, many communities where, in church groups and stuff, where they've tried to monoculture the mentality of the participants. And so it's doomed to failure eventually, right? They can keep propping it up and keep putting inputs into the system, but without the diversity, there's no ability to really adjust, adapt, and accommodate to changing situations. And right now on this planet, in the energy we're in, situations, the vibration is changing very radically and very significantly. And I've said this to many people in my communities, that as outliers, like the bell curve with the normal, right, the median, the group of people in the middle who make up the bulk of our society, who are very similar. On the edges, the bell curve, curves right out, and many of us lie in these thin strips of the 2% even on each side of the bell curve. But while we're not a huge proportion of society, we contain a lot of diversity being out here, right, in various areas of spiritual understanding, sensitivities, right? Many of us don't function well in society because we are so far out of the norm of which society has been built around in the name of efficiency, right? Efficiency, we're going to look after the 88% who are in the broad category of middle, and, the 6% on either side can go get fucked, really. Sorry, that's a bit rich, but basically that's what it is. And of course, I'm not just talking about one measurable statistic here. This is over a broad range of stuff. But many of us who are in the external margins for some things are in the external margins for a lot of things, right, in terms of how we deal with society. But the point is, being out there, we carry a lot of diversity, which is really important for the survival of the entire population in times of change. This is what we've always seen, in biology, in groups of individuals, whether they be plants or animals or whatever. In times of change, it's the genetics held in these marginalized groups, the exterior, the non-normals, that gets reintroduced to the population and brings it through whatever the challenge was. So gallbladder issues. I'll have a think about that in a second, Jill. What else have I missed? No, I don't need them anymore, and I did state that too, Susie. So I actually said, I am fortunate that I no longer need this group for my sense of community and sense of belonging anymore, although I did when I first started, right? It was very important to me. But I know a lot of people here do feel that they need this group, and that's why they're complying with your desires, because it's either that or leave. But just because I don't need them anymore doesn't mean I wasn't enjoying still being associated with it, right? I don't just choose things out of need anymore. I choose things out of what feels sustaining and nurturing and serviceful, right? I was adding input to that group every now and again. I wasn't on there all the time because I knew I was getting further and further out of, alignment with the direction they were going. But every now and again, I put my 2 cents in to help individuals within that group who are getting confused by the direction of the administration or by, various things that the group did and suggested and etc. So from that place of not needing to be in the group, I was able to speak out. And that says a lot about, need is one of the things that we all desire to master so that we are not, railroaded, so that we can stand in integrity. It's very hard to stay in your integrity when you don't feel self-sufficient to a point, when you don't feel that your basic needs are being met, and therefore you become reliant and dependent upon others. We see this, how people get trapped in relationship, and how that can be abusive, and yet they can't seem to leave because they don't perceive that they can survive without what the relationship's giving them, even though the relationship is far from ideal, satisfactory, even safe. So yeah, getting beyond need is important for all of us in all levels of our life, because then it allows us to stand in integrity and we can take it or leave it, which then gives us great potential to be a positive influence vibrationally, right? We don't need to reduce ourselves, sacrifice ourselves in order to stay in something that we think we need. And, we look at society that's trying to create more and more need out there now, through creating division, through creating fear, through creating food shortages, through creating economic downturn and job shortages, which are soon to come, etc., right? Health crisis, etc., creating the need so that people will comply. Because people who aren't needy don't comply, right? They do what they feel to do. This is the point. So, it is, I think, important for all of us, or beneficial for all of us, to really look at what we feel that we need and really come to terms with, is that the truth? I managed to actually swipe away something without getting caught in it. Mary said, I find what you are speaking about reminds me of my days being involved with the fundamental Christianity. They wanted us all to think and be the same. This is where my trauma resides. Yeah, well, that's a great recognition, Mary. And it's true, right? So, authoritarian regimes, any sort of regime that's built in this sort of way, desires people to be the same, because that's easy. It makes them easier and easier to control when they all think the same way. And then what happens is once that's, and I got caught in this in the yoga community I was in as well. We all started being more and more like the same, right? This mentality of similarity breeds within it, and it gets quite insular and quite cutthroat too. While there's a huge amount of support for everyone who reinforces, virtue signals the same, right? Anyone who questions same gets ousted and outed very quickly, because it's like a house of cards. When you set up these ecosystems of mentality, as I was saying, these monocultures are very, very fragile. And so doubt becomes much more threatening to the whole system that is built out of this sort of monoculture belief system. And so doubt has to get stepped on very, very quickly. And this is why protecting everyone from negativity, right, is what they term it. They oust people, cancel people, censor people, ridicule people who dare to question the narrative in order to keep this bubble going. Eventually it's going to burst, as it always does. It did in the yoga community in rather spectacular fashion. It's just done it to a degree in this ascension group. They can't last. They can't last. And it will do it in our bigger society as well, our government structures, the World Economic Forum type bubble that's building around this thing. So So the point is to be aware of all this and to recognise that there is trauma definitely involved in it, because being ousted by a community doesn't feel good, especially for those of us who've been burnt at the stake, etc., been ousted from communities in the past for not complying, church groups, etc. Those are pretty heavy energies, and they do rise up when we trigger them, and it doesn't feel comfortable. It doesn't feel comfortable at all to be going through a situation that reminds you on a deep energetic level of what was horrendously painful in the past, like getting burnt alive, etc. Those are pretty high end experiences, and create ripples in our energetic structure. Mary wrote, I noticed that a lot of groups have members that actually say the same phrases as the teacher. Yes, exactly. And we saw this, people start mimicking each other, and it all makes people feel like they've got a sense of belonging, right? They use the languaging, and they all have this group clique, right? This group culture. They speak their own language, which feels really good to a fragile ego that doesn't feel that it belongs in the world. That's why these groups grow on the margins quite often. People who are not fitting into normality, not just happy with retail therapy, etc., right? Spiritual communities are a great place for this to fester, this coming together in a group, cloistering together in a group to feel safe and to feel appreciated. But unfortunately, it gets so insular and so monoculture that it's doomed to failure unless we are consciously encourage that not to happen, consciously choose to celebrate our differences, to notice our diversities, and to really heighten those rather than to suppress those in order to feel the love of being all this quote unquote the same, where everyone is non-threatened because no one has to feel challenged, because if we're all thinking the same, then there's no challenges. That feels comfortable to our ego, right? And so we want to keep that going, and anyone who challenges that, we'll get rid of them so that we don't have to deal with looking outside of the little box that we're building for ourselves. Anywho's, right. Yes, it's important to encourage authenticity. It's important to encourage people to really celebrate their innate uniqueness, and not to feel that that they're being compared, right? We've got to let go of this comparison. It's the fear of being compared and then judged that keeps people wanting to mimic each other, right? Because if we mimic each other, then there's nothing to compare. Therefore, there's nothing to judge, right? And that feels safe to the ego. But we have to risk being judged. We have to risk being judged in order to really celebrate our uniqueness and be authentic in our integrity. And still feel that we can belong to groups, but the group has to be something that celebrates being unique and different, and still obviously celebrate the similarities that's brought us together in the first place, right? I'm missing a shit ton of these comments. I will try and look at them. I'm probably gone over time as well. I have. Yeah, Deb wrote, 6 weeks ago I was asked to leave a sovereign freedom group because I asked too many questions and they thought I was an infiltrator. Yeah. Yeah, it's in all groups, in the environmental activism, it's all the same, right? These groups grow around some sort of central figure or some sort of core controlling group, and then everyone else is supposed to comply. And anyone else is seen as a troublemaker, right? Asking questions is seen as a troublemaker. It's been instilled from school that people who interrupt, people who ask questions, people who inquire counter to efficiently moving forward as a group, right? And getting things done and learning things. And, so it's not celebrated and it's not honored. And this is really coming up intensely now to be very clearly seen, so that we can release it, right, and really move forward into a better celebration. Yeah, exactly. Mary said she left the church and moved on, but the members who are still there are still in the same mindset, and they no longer are friendly to me. No, because it can't be friendly to you, Mary, because that would challenge them. that would challenge them. So to protect themselves, they have to distance themselves from you. Yeah, Jill said ditto. For some of my therapy modality hierarchies, had to walk away a few times. Only got kicked out once. Yeah. Julie said, I did not say it was your fault or ask you to sponsor me. Hang on. This is obviously the second part of something. Maybe. Right, I'm going to try and make some sense of what Julie Ray said. No, it's not going to let me see more. I'm not quite sure what that's about, Julie. Ask you to sponsor me. I simply explained my situation simply for your awareness. I'm not sure. Maybe there's been a misunderstanding there. I'm not sure. I don't think I was talking what I was talking about to your question. Can't actually see your question. I saw what you wrote exactly. Yeah, if you're misunderstanding, Julie, I haven't spoken about anything to do with you. So, oh, okay. You were multitasking. Okay, awesome. I was getting confused there because I know we've had a conversation recently, and then I thought maybe you were thinking that I was talking about something we talked about in our conversation, which I was not. Awesome. Righto, my friends. I've probably spoken for long enough, and then ended with a little bit of confusion, but that's okay. That's life. I think we all have to be. This is the point. It's really easy for miscommunication to happen at the moment, and it's important, in my opinion, when you feel that there's been a miscommunication, to inquire a little deeper, rather than choosing to jump to a conclusion and then starting to react from that conclusion. Miscommunication at the moment is really, really easy, partly because we do a lot of communicating now by texting. A lot of multitasking is occurring. We're not face-to-face with people. Hey, Sister Barbara. We're not face-to-face with people anymore, so it's much, much easier to misunderstand what they are saying when we're receiving various communication threads, however that might be coming. So the way forward is to have good, clear, honest, open communication. And if you're not understanding where someone's coming from, the best thing to do is to ask, right? To actually take the time to clear things up, because otherwise, if you allow yourself to just think you understand what they're talking about, but not sure, and then start to feel all uncomfortable about that, it can spiral. And this is how a lot of relationships go downhill, because people aren't willing to actually have what might seem like a difficult conversation. The irony is, most of the time you think it's going to be a difficult conversation, and it's not. It was a misunderstanding to begin with, right? And it gets cleared up quite easily. But if we allow it to fester, and if we allow our mind to run out of control with these various different, possibilities and potentials around what's going on, then, rifts can happen that are unfortunate, really, and really, might take away a lot of opportunity for us to experience the beauty of being in a relationship, because we've had a misunderstanding which could have been cleared up with a simple, more open conversation around what was misunderstood, or what potentially was misunderstood to begin with. So yeah, but it is difficult because a lot of people are feeling more and more scared to have these conversations, because the intensity at which people are reacting these days, the level of anger and the level of fear that's in the society means people are overreacting to people, quote unquote, like questioning. What do you really mean by that? What do you mean? What do I mean? You know, like they can't actually take it on face value. They take it as a criticism when you say, I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you meant. They think you're trying to play some sort of psychological game with them because they're so used to having psychological games played with them, right? Our authorities are doing it to us. Our media is doing to us. Our all sorts of authorities are playing these psychological games with us. And so people are very fragile, very easily upset in this way. And so walking through having communication with people is getting difficult. And this is feeding back to Sister Fiona's question: is why are people, choosing not to communicate so much? It's because they're scared to, a lot of the time, and have been educated out of the value of communicating as well, I feel, and they sort of go hand in hand. So my advice, our advice, is to be willing to, even though you might be feeling a bit fearful, a bit trepidatious, a bit doubtful about opening threads of conversation, it is generally worth it. It is generally worth it to, if you're not understanding where someone's coming from, is to take the effort and take the risk to question and say, I'm sorry, but I'm not sure where you're coming from with that. And work to clear it up so that you can both be on the same page and work together in whatever capacity, from a clearer space. Yeah. Yeah, sorry, Jill. I've missed quite a lot, and I'm just here with my phone, so I'm scrolling through this thing trying to find what I've missed, and I seem to have missed quite a bit. So, but I know you said something about the gallbladder, and to be honest, I can't remember. I know the gallbladder is involved in providing the gall, which helps us to digest fats. And I know people say, that you haven't got the gall to go through with that. So, but yeah, I'm not an encyclopedia of metaphysical things. I usually think about what the organ or what the part of the body does for us, and that generally gives me a clue. When someone says you've got chronic problems with a certain organ, I generally find some understanding about that. But I can't say that I have a clear message about the gallbladder right now without sort of getting into a private conversation around you about what it is with your gallbladder and how it's affecting you, etc., etc., in which case I'll probably have some understanding. So, yeah, anyways, I better get on because I've got work to do. I've got work to do, and I will try and read the comments later. Yeah, okay. So Jill said dealing with customer services and getting second guessed, etc., etc. Yeah, it's Matt the Builder time. Yeah, I'll do my best to answer that, Sister Jill. But generally, all of what we've talked about communication and stuff is what's happening in customer service as well. And yeah, it's a bit of a shit show at the moment out there in our society, but I don't believe it's bad. Right. Yeah, it is quote unquote bad at the moment, but I think the bad that it is at the moment is part of the unfolding, the basically the disintegration of what hasn't worked. And so we have to be an allowance that society is pretty messy right now as it is going through a process of being upgraded. So let's not freak out that so many things seem so discordant, but rather see that so many things are so discordant because we are moving through a process of expanding out of what has been a functional structure for a long time, but not an ideal one. Thanks, Audra. Yeah, all you guys keep shining your bright lights. Susie, Debbie, Matt the Builder. Jill said, for me, gallbladder is decisions. Yeah, exactly. And that makes sense, right? When people say they haven't got the gall for that, it basically means they're too timid to step into something. Anywho, much love to you all. I will be back next week with any luck. Take it easy. Bye for now. Keep smiling. Oh, it's new moon tomorrow, I think. Or no, the next day, Friday morning. It's less than 48 hours away because it's about 5 a.m. in the morning my time. So just be aware that we're sort of going through these old endings right now in as the prelude to a new beginning that's happening in about 45 hours or so. So just be aware of that as well if you feel a lot of shit coming up to end. Just remind yourself that it's coming up to end and you don't need to freak out about it. Much love. Bye for now.